From Michigan Public, this is It's Just Politics. I'm Zoe Clark.
And I'm Rick Pluta.
3 weeks have now passed since the state's July 1st statutory deadline to complete a budget.
This is affecting school districts, higher education, some local governments whose fiscal years have already begun.
They simply do not know how much money they're going to be getting from the state.
And it appears, at least from the outside, that Lansing is at a standstill.
So today, we're speaking with two lawmakers who are in the room with negotiations over the school aid budget.
We will start with Republican Representative Tim Kelly. He is chair of the House School Aid and Department of Education Budget Subcommittee. Representative, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Rick.
So where do things stand right now vis-a-vis negotiations between the Republican-controlled House, the Democratic-controlled Senate, and Governor Whitmer?
Well, I believe we're a bit at an impasse. I think that maybe we'll get something started again this week. I'm really not sure where they want to go. Look, we were trying to put something together. Obviously, it kind of fell through. I think it hinged on roads as well as the school aid budget. And I think the Senate Democrats just did not want to deal with both at the time. I think it's helpful that the governor now has kind of intervened and is kind of pushing the same. So we'll see if that doesn't kickstart things.
Right. The governor intervening and basically saying in her estimation that a budget deal will not be a budget deal unless there is a deal over roads as well. Representative Kelly, you have been in the legislature for terms and terms. You know how all of this works. What conversations are actually happening? Like, yes, we're at a standstill, but who's coming to the table and saying, come on, guys, we got to get this done? Anybody?
No, I think we've been trading some op-eds and that sort of thing. I think that, like I said, I think this week we'll re-engage. We're going back in and kind of find out where things are. I have not had a conversation with my counterpart, Senator Camilleri, since we left. So, but every now and again, I think I just ought to give him a call, and then I don't know what puts me off other than just, we'll see where we are.
Representative, what does it say about the process, how things are going, what the practical structure of the legislature is right now, if there aren't any scheduled conversations about wrapping up this budget since we're now past the statutory deadline?
Well, one is clearly all sides have kind of, looked past the tripwire of July 1. I think that we're looking now at how do we stave off a shutdown at this point. And I think it's, incumbent upon us, honestly, to get back and let's start talking. Let's see what we can do, because I think that there's still an awful lot to, there's other budgets to roll out. There's some negotiations. There's been the federal things have kind of been settled to some degree now. So I think that there's a lot to that we've been supplied with new information. We ought to be able to deal with that.
Representative, what are you hearing from those who are affected by this delay? I'm thinking again about school districts across the state who still just don't know how much state money they're going to receive, and their budgets have already started.
Zoe, to that answer, I've said, all along, I said, look, that we put out 1025 back in March or something like that. 10,000. Their 10,008 were 10,025. We've had that for months, and I've told school districts, you can bank on that. 1025 is a floor, not a ceiling. And I think that many that I've talked to eventually kind of did that anyway. So whether it's not particularly all fleshed out, I think there's enough of some bones to put together. Well, clearly they have, because they had to have budgets, I think, starting in July 1.
We're speaking with Republican Representative Tim Kelly. He is chair of the School Aid and Department of Education Subcommittee. So, Representative, I hear you saying that we've blown past July 1st and that negotiations are basically stalled. How should voters feel about this?
I think voters, honestly should probably feel a bit miffed, disappointed that we can't get this done. Follow kind of budgetary timelines that have been been traditional. But back in 2019, this happened. They didn't get a budget till the close to the end of September. Once again, with divided government, we haven't had that since, and here we are again, and it's proven it doesn't work very well when two sides. It's hard for we have totally ideologically different ways of trying to come together. I believe myself that Darren Camilleri and I believe a lot, have similar thoughts about a lot of things, and I think that we can get this done if we just have the right parameters to go by.
This is the fewest number of bills that have been passed so far in a legislative term in modern Michigan history. Grade the legislature right now.
First of all, as a conservative, I think that's terrific. I think that 5 bills, signed into law so far, I think I think it's healthy. I don't think it's unhealthy. I think Michigan has gotten to where we pass way too many bills on an annual basis, and it's ridiculous. We need to get rid of laws before we start making new ones. We don't even enforce the ones we have, Zoe. I mean, this is just I think it's been wonderful that we only have 5 laws.
We've been talking about education. We've been talking about the budget, and that's where the stalemate is. But I'm curious, from your point of view, are there other policy issues where perhaps compromise could be found between the Democratic-controlled Senate and the Republican-held House?
Well, we're going to have to. I mean, we do have to put together a budget. And I think that is incumbent upon a roads package as well. I mean, unless you just want to kick that down the road again, no pun intended, but kick the can down the road again. But I think that she needs this, the governor, as to end her, wrap up her 8 years in office. I think she cannot leave office without feeling like she's got a good roads plan.
So, Representative, what happens next? What should we be watching for?
Well, we're doing this hearings this week. I think, again, that'll help kickstart stuff. It'll get some people back in Lansing. Perhaps we'll, take a run at starting some talks again. Look, I think that there was lots of places that we can go back to where we were negotiating. Rick, I just felt like, and I think the speaker and many just felt like we were giving up ground and we weren't being met with appreciation or trying to meet us. So it was just kind of, well, okay. And then the idea that they didn't want anything to do with roads package or weren't ready to negotiate until we had passed all the budget, just seemed kind of ridiculous to stay, there and trying to work something out.
But what should members of the public be watching for in the legislature for some signal that progress is being made?
The turning of the leaves, perhaps. I don't mean to be flippant, but this. I think it may likely be not till September, where pressure puts people on notice. Pressure makes people work. Much like it's unfortunate that Lansing has become more like Washington.
That is Republican Tim Kelly. He is chair of the House School Aid and Department of Education Subcommittee. Representative, thanks so much for the time.
Thanks for the time.
Very welcome. And again, thanks for both of you for having me.
And let's turn now to Democratic Senator Darren Camilleri. He is chair of the Senate Pre-K through 12 School Aid Budget Subcommittee. Senator, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I want to ask you the same question we asked Representative Kelly. From your understanding, where do things stand right now with negotiations between the Republican-controlled House, the Democratic-controlled Senate, and Governor Whitmer?
I think the challenge has been getting to a point where the principals can set targets, right? And then for regular folks listening, that's the amount of money that we can spend for each budget. And in this case, K through 12 schools or pre-K through 12 schools. And it seems as if there has not been any level of agreement between the speaker, the governor, and the Senate Majority Leader. And I'll be very frank. I mean, the person who's been the problem every step of the way, from my understanding of these conversations, is Speaker Matt Hall. He has been unwilling to compromise and get to a deal so that we can actually get a school budget done. I don't exactly know what his hangup is, but from what we can see from publicly available budgets, I mean, his budget is so different than ours and only seems to want to cut services for our students and create an unsustainable school budget that is just not something that we're willing to accept. So I think from my perspective, that's where things ended on July 1st, and not much has happened since.
So are any conversations actually happening behind the scenes?
It seems as if a lot of that has stalled, right when we hit the July 1st deadline. I know that some staff continue to talk, but in terms of the big three principals getting together, there doesn't seem to have been a lot of movement on that front. But Leader Brinks, the governor, they're talking often, and I hope that we can get the speaker to join in on those conversations soon, because we do need to know what type of budget we can work with going into the new fiscal year.
Senator, where is Governor Whitmer in all of this?
She's been talking to the Senate Majority Leader, and we talk to her staff all the time. She was very clear, I think, last week. She wants to get a roads deal done as a part of this budget process. I think we've heard her loud and clear. And I think a lot of members of the Senate are also interested in a roads deal. One of the things that we're not interested in, though, is putting huge sums of money from the school budget to roads. It's something that's been a very obvious sticking point as you can see these negotiations play out in the public. We're willing, I think, to get to a deal on roads. Many of us are interested in some of the concepts that the governor put out, like increasing the corporate income tax or going after other sources of revenue that don't impact regular people. But one of the things that I am trying my best to stop is a transfer of money from the school aid budget to roads. It's not fair to students, it's not fair to educators, and there are other ways to get a road funding deal done.
So you're trying to stop it, but it does seem like there is a push from the Republican-controlled House and possibly maybe Governor Whitmer. So what happens next?
I think that we can get to a deal. I want to be very clear on that. Senate Democrats are very open to getting to a roads deal, but it has to be one that is sustainable, that actually fixes the long-term problems, and actually funds the roads in a way that fixes these long-term problems.
As far as the delay going past July 1st, what are you hearing from schools, students, families, local governments, all these entities that are affected by the fact that the budget isn't done?
Schools and local governments definitely want to get a budget done. We've heard them loud and clear, but they also want to get a budget done that does not hurt them. Any of the proposals that we've seen from the House Republicans have only cut funding to schools and locals and other essential state services. And that's something that I want to just keep reminding folks who are listening. We have a budget that is balanced, that is investing historic revenue into our school districts so that we can maintain the free breakfast and lunch program, so that we can create CTE programs, invest in mental health and school safety. Those are programs that we've heard our educators say they want to keep and maintain. So we're hearing loud and clear that they want us to hold the line and get a good deal, not just a rushed deal in order to have a budget done.
We're speaking with Senator Darren Camilleri. He is chair of the Senate Pre-K through 12 School Aid Budget Subcommittee. Senator, I'm curious, how do you think voters should feel about all of this?
Voters are starting to see more and more of the impacts of the leaders, not only in Lansing, but also in Washington, D.C. We are dealing with a Republican Party that is hell-bent on cutting government services. You saw it out of the big awful bill in Washington, D.C. You're seeing it from House Republicans in Lansing, who offered a school budget that will cut programs like the School Meals for All program. They offered a stopgap measure, quote unquote, that cuts billions of dollars from the state budget. Voters are paying attention to budgets in a way that we probably have not seen in quite some time. So I think that they want us to get to a deal. They want to ensure that many of these vital programs can continue to be maintained. And they want us to create a budget with both sides of the aisle in mind. I think that we're willing to do that. Obviously, we have to do that given the current makeup of the legislature. But I want to remind voters that we didn't have a problem getting a good budget done by July 1st in the last 2 years. There's only one thing that has changed, and we have a Speaker of the House who has continued to cause problems towards getting that budget done.
It seems like all of the oxygen right now is being sucked up by the budget deal, the roads deal. But are there any other policies that are being discussed where maybe we could see a compromise, a breakthrough? Or is the budget the only thing that's on the table right now?
Right now, I feel like the budget is priority number one. We obviously have prioritized other legislation out of the Senate. We've sent many pieces of legislation to the House, but as you all know, only 6 pieces of legislation have actually made it to the governor's desk, which is the slowest period of time that we've ever had in the legislature. And typically, we send over 100 bills by this period of time to the governor's desk. I am not very hopeful that we're going to get a lot of policy done with this obstructionist speaker. His method of success, his version of success, is whether or not he can stop pieces of legislation from happening. By that metric, he's been pretty successful. But the people who are hurt in that process are our residents. We were elected to get things done for our residents, and that's what we intend to do out of the state Senate, and we'll keep trying our best. We are always willing to get to a negotiating table where we can create good policy and good budgets. We just have to have some willing partners from the other side of the aisle.
Senator, finally, as we look forward, what happens next? What should folks who are following along in this process be looking for?
Our hope is that we can get to a school budget before school starts. That's our next goalpost. If that can't happen, we're going to work towards that October 1st deadline and hopefully get an entire budget process done in that September month. Now, that's a lot of work. We have not seen a product of a full budget from the House Republicans other than their one that cut billions of dollars of programs. So we've got to close a giant gap. I joked about this in a different interview a couple months ago, but the span between our budgets right now is about as big as the Mackinac Bridge. And that's something that we need to close. We've got to close that gap. It's going to take a lot of effort, a lot of compromise. My hope is that we can get that done before the October deadline. And it's going to be a challenge, but we're willing to do all that we can to make it happen.
The October 1st deadline, which under state law is when the state's fiscal year begins. Are you concerned about missing that deadline and the possibility of a government shutdown?
It's something that's always on my mind, but I'm not in that mode where we have to worry about it just yet. We still have a couple of months before we can get there. A lot can happen in a short period of time if you have the willingness to do it. Anybody who's watched Lansing politics can see a bill go from an idea to a language in a bill draft to passage within a week. That's something that I think we've got the ability to do with these budgets, but we've got to keep pressing and organizing and pushing to make that happen. This is something that I would urge all of your listeners to do. Talk to your legislators. Tell them that you want to get a budget deal done, whether it's schools or the regular budget. Please keep that pressure up, because that's the only way that we're going to get to a budget deal on time, is if residents reach out to their elected officials and their elected officials realize the magnitude of the work that the people have placed their trust in us to accomplish.
That is Democratic Senator Darren Camilleri. He is chair of the Senate Pre-K through 12 School Aid Budget Subcommittee. Senator, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Meantime, the State House Fiscal Agency came out with new numbers this week, showing the state could have $677 million less to work with in the new budget year. That's because of the new federal law signed by President Trump earlier this month. Just one more complication in state budget negotiations. And that is It's Just Politics for today. I am Zoe Clark.
And I'm Rick Pluta.
Let's talk again next week.